reasons why I was always in a corner, or I was always not in the center of a conversation, why I was always in the periphery of people laughing and engaging with each other. There was something shy, I guess, but it was also something insecure as I was growing up.
There's a curious alchemy in the world of cinema. Beyond scripts, direction, or score, it's often the actors, their gestures, their timing, their sheer presence, who cement a film's legacy in the minds of viewers. The screen becomes something more than entertainment. It becomes memory, myth, and meaning. This space we're diving into today is deeply tied to that legacy, not through speculation or fan theory, but through the lens of one of the most influential directors to have ever stepped behind the camera. When you consider Steven Spielberg's body of work, you realize he hasn't merely directed films, he's directed cultural moments. But before all that, Spielberg was a student of the screen, in awe of those who shaped the cinematic language he would later go on to master. When asked to name actors who've defined his creative compass, his choices speak volumes, not just about those actors, but about what Spielberg himself values most in performance. Let's break this down, not a ranking, but a reverent analysis. What Spielberg values in an actor is not measured by popularity or the number of headlines. They have to mean something. That meaning, for him, is rooted in history, intention, and emotional fidelity. The 5 actors he's named as his personal favorites aren't simply relics of classic Hollywood. They are, in Spielberg's world, the clearest distillation of what screen presence should be: quietly powerful, emotionally transparent, and unshakably human. This is not about nostalgia. Spielberg's affection for these performers is grounded in how they serve the emotional fabric of a film. They didn't try to own scenes. They lived inside them, surrendering to story over spectacle. They weren't there to be icons. They became icons because they let the audience in. Each brought a unique kind of truth to the screen, which shaped Spielberg's sense of storytelling in lasting ways. Spencer Tracy's approach still casts a long shadow over Spielberg's ideal of performance. Tracy didn't decorate his roles. He never felt like he was trying to play anything. That quiet control, where emotion doesn't need to be screamed to be heard, is something Spielberg has searched for repeatedly in the people he casts. It's that same natural flow you see in Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan, or in Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters. Tracy was proof that subtlety doesn't dilute impact. It strengthens it. Then there's Henry Fonda, whose sense of justice wasn't just written into his characters, but radiated from him. Spielberg saw Fonda as the kind of actor who brought gravity without effort. In scenes where others might have leaned into righteousness, Fonda remained still, and in that stillness, he spoke volumes. Spielberg borrowed that restraint and carried it into the performances of actors like Liam Neeson in Schindler's List and Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln. In both cases, moral conviction didn't come from speeches. It came from eyes that had seen too much and hearts that had no choice but to respond. Jimmy Stewart, on the other hand, made emotion feel safe. Spielberg has long appreciated actors who can thread vulnerability without appearing weak. Stewart's gift was not just warmth. It was the courage to expose emotional truth. When he faltered on screen, audiences felt it in their bones. That same emotional line runs through Spielberg's more intimate work, especially E.T., where every tear and whisper feels drawn from Stewart's influence. Stewart made pain visible without asking for pity and joy, without demanding attention. Cary Grant brought something different to the table. Spielberg understood that charm, when wielded with precision, could carry a film just as powerfully as raw emotion. Grant's performances weren't just about looks or timing. They were strategic. Every gesture, every pause, was deliberate. That level of control, while maintaining a breezy exterior, became a blueprint for Spielberg when working with actors who had to walk tightropes between drama and levity, like Leonardo DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can. Spielberg respected Grant's ability to remain light on the surface while building tension underneath. And then there's Clark Gable, the most theatrical of the five, yet still deeply disciplined. Gable had presence, not in the exaggerated sense, but in the way he could command a room without saying a word. Spielberg was drawn to that rare ability to hold space, to dominate a moment with silence, with stillness. It's the kind of presence he later pursued with actors like Harrison Ford in the Indiana Jones series, a character who could swing from action to introspection and remain believable throughout. What ties all these names together is not style or genre. It's the emotional architecture they brought to the screen. Spielberg isn't interested in surface. He's drawn to performers who are vessels for something deeper, people who carry emotional weight without having to name it, who let the camera in rather than acting for it, and who, most importantly, treats every role, no matter how small, as something worthy of care. Even as the film industry changed around him, with trends shifting, with digital reshaping performance, and with audiences craving spectacle, Spielberg's loyalty to these core ideals never wavered. You see it in how he directs actors. He doesn't ask them to be loud. He doesn't need them to perform emotion. He needs them to feel it. That principle traces directly back to this very list. Tracy, Fonda, Stewart, Grant, and Gable. These names, for Spielberg, weren't just actors. They were guideposts. Their choices shaped his. Their commitment to truth made him believe that great cinema doesn't come from dazzling the eye. It comes from trusting the audience to feel what's unspoken. Spielberg's legacy, like theirs, isn't built on flash. It's built on faith in the power of presence. Spielberg's standards for performance are quietly rigorous. His direction doesn't chase spectacle through acting. It seeks stillness, clarity, and emotional access. His focus has always been on what the actor is feeling, not just on what they're saying. That difference guides his casting decisions, shapes his collaborations, and defines the performances that leave a mark in his films. He's known for appreciating actors who understand the value of restraint, not those who demand the spotlight, but those who know when to hold back. For Spielberg, acting isn't about overwhelming the frame. It's about letting the audience find themselves in a scene. That philosophy leads him to praise what he calls reactive acting, when the most powerful moments come in silence, in a glance and in stillness between words. His method reveals itself most clearly when working with children. There's a pattern in how he draws real emotion from young performers, not by drilling lines into them, but by creating moments they can live through. In films like E.T. or Empire of the Sun, the emotions on screen aren't rehearsed into perfection. They're captured in real time, as if Spielberg is chasing emotional truth more than technical polish. He trusts that the audience can feel when something is real, and that sense of honesty always takes priority. This preference doesn't mean he's indifferent to skill. Far from it, but his admiration leans toward a different kind of mastery, the kind that makes acting feel invisible. He looks for timing, nuance, and presence, not performative skill. He said before that his favorite actors don't act the scene, they belong in it. That grounding, that sense of natural rhythm, is what separates a performance he admires from one he forgets. Some of the most powerful proof of Spielberg's taste lies in the actors he returns to again and again. When he finds someone who understands his language, that relationship tends to last. These aren't just casting decisions. They're partnerships built on artistic trust. Tom Hanks stands at the center of that trust. Across 5 films, their collaboration has produced roles of depth and authenticity. Spielberg has said that Hanks carries moral weight without needing to assert it. That quiet strength, layered with vulnerability, is what he sees as the essence of leadership on screen. It's no coincidence that Hanks has portrayed soldiers, journalists, and everyday men navigating impossible situations. Spielberg believes Hanks can hold complex emotion without explanation. And for him, that's rare. Then there's Mark Rylance, who has emerged as one of Spielberg's more recent collaborators. Rylance doesn't demand attention. He commands it with silence. In Bridge of Spies, his understated performance was a revelation to many, but Spielberg had seen that subtle control early on. He has since brought Rylance into multiple projects, describing him as an actor who elevates scenes by doing less. Not out of passivity, but out of purpose. Every movement is intentional. Every pause has weight. Daniel Day-Lewis, though only appearing once in Spielberg's filmography, made an impact that still echoes. His portrayal of Abraham Lincoln wasn't about mimicry. It was about transformation. Spielberg has spoken about the experience as something bordering on unreal. Day-Lewis didn't just play a role, he absorbed it. That kind of immersive dedication isn't common, even among the best. Spielberg often points to Lincoln as a high point in his creative life, not just for the film itself, but for the intensity of that collaboration. And of course, Harrison Ford, a name forever linked to Spielberg's rise in popular cinema. Ford brought something specific to Indiana Jones that Spielberg has always credited as essential: clarity of action, integrity of character, and just enough weariness to make the danger believable. It wasn't just about charm or adventure. It was about Ford grounding the extraordinary in something tangible. Spielberg has said Ford never pushes the moment too far. He plays it just enough to feel real, even in the wildest circumstances. Across these collaborations, a pattern holds. Spielberg looks for actors who give more than lines. They give access. They offer themselves to the scene with a kind of quiet, fearlessness. Whether through years of working together or a single unforgettable performance, these actors have helped Spielberg explore themes of courage, conscience, and connection, not by reaching, but by revealing. For Spielberg, performance is not about the noise it creates. It's about the clarity it leaves behind. One of Spielberg's most consistent, yet understated strengths lies in his ability to guide young performers toward emotionally layered work. His films rarely treat children as comic relief or background decoration. Instead, they become the emotional core. Spielberg doesn't manipulate their performances. He gives them space to explore, allowing authenticity to rise naturally. This process is less about direction in the traditional sense, and more about creating a space where instinct leads. Take E.T. as a central example. The heart of the film rests on Henry Thomas, who was just 10 when Spielberg cast him. Thomas's audition footage has become iconic, not because he performed a monologue perfectly, but because he lived through a moment in real time. Spielberg has described it as one of the rare instances where an actor fully surrendered to emotion without needing context or motivation explained. That decision to trust Thomas resulted in one of the most emotionally sincere child performances in film history. Thomas wasn't acting. He was responding. And that, for Spielberg, is the essence of what great performance can be. In Empire of the Sun, Christian Bale took on a role with emotional depth and psychological complexity far beyond what most adults handle. Spielberg was struck not only by Bale's emotional range, but by his focus. At only 12, Bale anchored nearly every scene of a demanding war film. There was nothing performative in how he approached it. Spielberg recognized that Bale had a rare ability to internalize trauma and reflect it with clarity. His direction with Bale wasn't about shaping scenes moment by moment. It was about trusting the young actor's instincts and framing the world around them to match his emotional trajectory. With Drew Barrymore, Spielberg saw something raw and unfiltered. She wasn't overly rehearsed, and she didn't try to fit into an idea of what a child character should be. In interviews, Spielberg has often recalled how she would speak and react with a spontaneity that was completely unscripted. That unpredictability, rather than being edited out, was embraced. Spielberg encouraged it, understanding that true emotional moments often arrive when nothing is forced. Barrymore's early performance reflected a freedom that adult actors often lose over time. She wasn't afraid of being seen in full, and Spielberg made sure that kind of courage had space to live on screen. What ties these child performances together isn't just Spielberg's skill in casting, but his approach to storytelling. These young actors weren't just plugged into, they became integral to the emotional rhythm of the film. The camera doesn't just observe them, it listens. Spielberg's direction tunes into subtle shifts in breath, glance, and posture. It's less about staging drama and more about building trust, allowing truth to emerge in its own time. In many ways, these choices reflect Spielberg's admiration for the performers who shaped his sensibility. The influence of actors like Fonda, Stewart, or Tracy is not only present in his casting, but also in the thematic structure of his films. Spielberg is drawn to people, both adults and children, who can express conscience and vulnerability without overstating them. The performances he values most are those that feel lived in, where the actor disappears and the moment remains. Throughout his career, Spielberg has built his stories around characters who carry emotional clarity, even in chaos. The way he positions actors within his narrative architecture is deeply deliberate. He isn't just asking them to perform scenes. He's asking them to carry values. From the quiet resilience of a soldier in Saving Private Ryan to the ethical conflict at the center of Munich, Spielberg's characters move through moral landscapes shaped by empathy, fear, loss, and hope. These aren't just plot devices. They're the direct result of Spielberg's emotional compass, formed in part by the very actors he holds in such high regard. Even in his most visually ambitious films, Spielberg anchors spectacle with humanity. The thrill is never separate from the character's experience. Action is filtered through personal stakes. Emotional realism drives the momentum, not the reverse. His sets are not built just for performance. They are built to support emotional memory. That approach explains why the simplest scenes often linger the longest. What makes Spielberg's work enduring performance? Commitment to emotional transparency. He does not chase sentiment. He creates conditions for it to surface naturally. That belief in feeling over formula, in character over concept, remains consistent across his body of work, from his earliest projects to his most recent. And behind that philosophy is a clear reverence for actors who give themselves fully to the truth of a moment. Whether they've been performing for decades or whether they've just walked onto a set for the first time. Over the years, Spielberg has expressed admiration for a wide range of actors, often highlighting qualities that align with his deep commitment to emotional truth and moral clarity. While he has been known for working closely with a core group of trusted collaborators, his praise has extended to others whose work left a lasting impression on him. One of the most celebrated names he has publicly spoken about is Meryl Streep. He once referred to her as a force of nature, emphasizing not just her technical ability, but the depth she brings into every role. Spielberg is not one to overstate praise, but in the case of Streep, he has consistently acknowledged her precision, adaptability, and the gravity she brings to each performance. Their eventual collaboration in the post allowed Spielberg to witness firsthand the intensity and preparation she brings to the set, something he deeply respects. Robert Shaw holds a unique place in Spielberg's personal recollection of on-set experiences. The performance Shaw delivered in Jaws, especially the monologue about the USS Indianapolis, has been described by Spielberg as one of the most courageous performances he's ever directed. Shaw delivered that scene under enormous pressure, battling both physical exhaustion and production limitations. Yet, the result became one of the most iconic moments in cinema, largely because Spielberg trusted Shaw to carry it through unbroken, with minimal interference. Liam Neeson's role in Schindler's List marked a turning point in Spielberg's understanding of cinematic heroism. He has described Neeson's performance as transformational, not only within the narrative, but in the way it influenced Spielberg's perception of what leadership and courage look like on screen. Neeson brought a quiet weight to Oskar Schindler, allowing vulnerability and strength to coexist without contradiction. Spielberg has noted that it was Neeson's emotional transparency that shaped how he edited and framed many of the film's most impactful scenes. Ben Kingsley also left a deep impression. In Schindler's List, Kingsley's character Itzhak Stern didn't often speak at length, yet Spielberg often pointed to his ability to communicate complex emotions through silence. It was Kingsley's gaze, the way he carried moral knowledge and quiet resistance in his body language, that made him so compelling. Spielberg values actors who know how to hold space without performing in a traditional sense, and Kingsley's restraint was central to the film's emotional tone. More recently, Michelle Williams brought something deeply personal to Spielberg's work in The Fabelmans. Spielberg has openly said that her portrayal moved him to the point of speechlessness during filming. Her performance drew from emotional memory, yet never drifted into imitation or stylization. For Spielberg, Williams's work reflected a rare honesty, something deeply rooted in empathy and intuition. He allowed scenes to run longer to give her time to discover and explore the emotional shifts as they occurred. These performances are not just moments of admiration. They have shaped the way Spielberg directs. Inspired by the older generation of actors like Spencer Tracy and Henry Fonda, Spielberg tends to give his performers room. He prefers longer takes when possible, not to create theatrical tension, but to allow real emotion to unfold. The structure of the scene is built around the actor's rhythm. Spielberg often removes barriers between the actor and the moment. His direction is fluid, reactive, and largely invisible. He allows improvisation when it serves the emotional truth. This isn't used as a stylistic trick, but as a method of access. Spielberg isn't looking for exact repetition. He's looking for something genuine to happen inside the scene. It's a method influenced heavily by the performers he admires, the ones who do not aim for perfection, but for emotional integrity. Across decades of filmmaking, there's a consistent thread in who he casts and praises. Spielberg gravitates toward actors who carry an internal moral compass, whether clearly defined or subtly buried. He avoids performances that feel hollow or cynical. Even in characters dealing with internal conflict or questionable motives, there's often a pulse of sincerity underneath. It's not about likability. It's about truth. When you examine the actors Spielberg favors, a distinct pattern emerges. They possess an emotional core that remains accessible to the audience. They don't push for attention. They inhabit their roles with an ease that makes the camera come to them. Whether it's the stoic resilience of Ford, the layered restraint of Rylance, or the intensity of Day-Lewis, each carries a weight that isn't measured by dialogue, but by presence. That presence, that ability to carry emotional history without over-explaining it, is what defines the Spielberg type. Performers who know when to speak and when to let silence hold the frame. Those who don't act over the story, but dissolve into it. Spielberg has never been drawn to artifice. His favorite actors, like his stories, remain grounded in the essential truths that move people quietly, deeply, and with lasting impact. So while the title might hint at a definitive Spielberg Top 12, the truth is more fascinating. What we see through his favorite actors is a portrait of Spielberg himself, his values, his influences, and his approach to storytelling. From Golden Age legends like Spencer Tracy to modern collaborators like Tom Hanks and Mark Rylance, each actor he champions is a thread in a much larger cinematic tapestry. If you found this breakdown insightful, hit that like button. It really helps push the video to more movie lovers. Got thoughts on who your top 12 actors of all time are, or who you think Spielberg might have left off? Let's talk about it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive storytelling content. We've got plenty more coming your way. Until next time, keep watching with intention.